Hi, fabulous Algebra 1 students. Welcome to Segment 2 Review. We're going to go ahead and get started. Looking at this graph, it says to observe the data and come up with a final answer. So let's look at the data. If we're going to draw our curved line, it ends up being skewed. And why does it end up being skewed? Because there are more days with lower temperatures than there are higher temperatures. Here we are going to look at box plots, and we are going to compare the following information: low score, high score, and median score. So looking at just Class A, we find that our low score is 55, high score is 95, and median score is 80. And then looking at Class B, our low score is 65, our high score is 100, and median score is 75. From there, you can make several statements after looking at the data that we've just presented. This round says the dance school has 54 students who learn salsa. So let's see, learn salsa. And 23 of those also learn ballet. So 54 learn salsa, and of those, 23 also learn ballet. And that's just from the first sentence. So if there's a total of 54, and 23 of them have learned both, what does that mean? Those that learn salsa only, it's going to be 31. Now let's look at the next statement. There are 15 students who did not learn salsa, but learned ballet. So no salsa, yes ballet. And 10 students did not learn either salsa or ballet, for a grand total of 25. So if we look at our totals here, and then start looking at how to calculate our percentages, we would use, in this particular case, 23 divided by 38, 31 divided by 41, 54 divided by 79. Here it would be 15 divided by 38, 10 divided by 41, and 25 divided by 79. Of course, these are not written in percentages. You would actually convert it to 61%, 76%, 68%, so forth and so on. Just a quick review of Module 7, or actually 7.01, is looking at polynomials. A monomial is one term, for example, x. A binomial is two terms, example, x plus 2. And a trinomial is three terms, example, x squared plus x plus 1. One of the things we need to look at is the degree of the terms. How do you calculate the degree of the terms? In this particular situation here, it says that it's x squared y cubed. And what we do is we take that term, we look at the exponents, 2 and 3, we add them together, so our degree would be 5. So what you want to do is you want to look at the one that has the highest. For example, at the bottom, we have 5, 3, and 2. Well, the highest is 5, therefore that problem would be 5. Now let's take a look at a different problem. Two groups of cyclers, the Hawks and the Eagles, cycled on two different routes from their camp to cave. The Hawks cycled through Bird Point to reach the cave. The Eagles cycled directly to the cave. The figure shows the distances cycled. So let's see. The Hawks went from 6.5 miles to Bird Point, plus another 3x miles, all the way to the cave for a total of 9x plus 5. Then the eagles went directly for 4x plus 2. So let's see. What do we have? We have a difference of 9x plus 5 minus 4x plus 2. And that's going to give us a 5x plus 3 for a grand total difference. Which expression is equivalent to the area of a metal sheet required to make this square-shaped traffic sign? Remember, area is length times width. We start out with, it's square, so 4x plus 3 squared. From there, it can be represented as 4x plus 3 plus or times 4x plus 3. And let's see, which choice would we have? The answer here, after we FOIL, remember, 4x squared plus 12x plus 12x plus 9. We're going to combine like terms here, and we would get B as our final answer. Now earlier we talked about degrees, and we said that we need to look at each term and calculate that number based on the exponents. So in this first top left expression, x cubed y squared, that's going to give us a degree of 5, and then 2. So what do you think our grand total degree is? It would be 5. So we can draw a line. Let me pick up my line tool from 5 to 5. The next one, we have 2, 1, 0. So it would be a 2. The next one has 1, 0, so it would be 1. Again, I'm going to pick up my line tool. And then we have 4, 2, 0, so that would be a 4. Oops, something happened with that one. And then the last one would be a 3, 2, 1, so it'd be a 3. So just to quickly review as I draw this line, you're going to take the degree of each term and calculate it or find it. And then from there, you're going to decide which one is the highest of all of them. And then that's going to give you the degree of the expression. Now let's look at simplifying. Whenever you have a power to a power, or you have a parentheses with a power on the outside, you have to distribute that to every term on the inside. So 2 squared x to the 4th y squared, and that takes care of our first parentheses. And then we have y to the 6th. Remember, we're going to, when we distribute, we are going to multiply. So then from here we can continue. 2 squared is 4. Well, x to the 4th cannot be multiplied by anything else. And then y squared times y to the 6th is going to give us y to the 8th. Looking at the problem number 2, I could rewrite this. So it would be 8x squared times 8x squared. And that would actually come out to be 64x to the 4th as a final answer. Problem number 1 on this page, if we use what's called the FOIL method, first, outer, inner, last, we're going to get 54x squared minus 6xy plus 36xy minus 4y squared. Then we're going to have to combine the like terms in the middle, and we will get 30xy for that for the middle term. Everything else stays the same, and that would be our final answer on problem number 1. Looking at problem number 2, again, you have an exponent on the outside. You're going to distribute it to everything on the inside. So let me show you what that actually looks like. So 4 times 4, y 2 times 4. So our final answer here would be x to the 16th over y to the 8th. Sorry for this one being a little blurry, but we have a d to the 7th divided by d to the 2nd. And if you remember, when you are dividing, you actually subtract the exponents. Then we have g to the 13th over g to the 7th. So our grand total here would be d to the 5th, g to the 6th. On this next problem, we have a trinomial, subtracting the trinomial. So since we're subtracting, we're going to place a -1 here, and we're going to distribute that -1 to everything and rewrite the problem. So we have 7x cubed minus 8x minus 5 minus 3x cubed minus 7x minus 1. So combining like terms, my -3x cubed is going to be combined with 7x cubed. My result is going to be 4x cubed. The next like term is -8x and -7x. If we combine those, we get -15x. And then the last ones are -5 and -1. Combining those, we get -6. I hope you're taking notes, and I hope that this is helping. So Sam decides to build a square garden. If the area of the garden is 4x squared plus 28x plus 49 feet, what is the length of one side of the garden? First of all, remember, the key words here is square garden. But if you notice, we have perfect squares here and a perfect square there. So let's see, what do we end up with? Well, how do we get 4x squared? We have 2x times 2x. And then how do we get 49? It would be 7 times 7. Now just to check our answer, we could FOIL this out. But the problem says, what is the area of one side? The area would be 2x plus 7. I'm sorry, not area, the length of one side. Now let's look at factoring. Factoring is pretty simple, especially when we have 4 terms. You're going to group the first 2 terms together and then the second 2 terms together, and you're going to try to find the GCF. So looking at this first group, our GCF is 5A. So 5A, if I take out 5A, I'm left with 3B. Then if I take out 5A on the next term, I'm left with 7. And then if I'm looking at my second set of parentheses, I see a common GCF, I should say, of -2. So I would end up with 3B plus 7. Do you notice how in the parentheses we have identical binomial? So 3B, sorry, my B looks a little bit like a 6. 3B plus 7, and then I'm going to write my GCF, 5A minus 2, and that would be the 4 terms factored into my 2 sets of binomials. So looking at the next problem, again, GCF, so we're going to take out a 2, and we're left with x squared minus 3x minus 18. And then we are going to continue to factor. We know that we're going to get x and x to be x squared. So what are our factors of -18 that when we add them together equals 3? So let me just write that out so you can visually see what I'm saying. We're looking for factors that when we multiply them together, it gives us -18. We are also looking for the same numbers that when we add them together, it gives us -3. Well, let's see. 18, how about -6 and 3? -6 and 3. So since that's the case, here are our binomials. Now let's talk about creating a perfect square trinomial. There's a guideline down at the bottom. It tells us that the quantity of a plus b squared equals a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So I just chose two separate information. This is supposed to be a y. This is a typo. So we have 2x and 3y. So if this is the case, we're going to, first of all, square the 2x, and we get 4x squared. So that's going to give us that first initial term. We're going to take the b, which is 3y, and we're going to square that, which is 9y squared. And that actually gives us our last term. So let's talk about the middle term, 2ab. Well, what that actually means is we are going to take, and I'm going to put it in the top right corner, we're going to take 2 times our value of a times our value of b. So let's look at this. 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12, and then xy. I hope that was simple for you. So you can do the very same with the a minus b squared. So let's look at factoring this completely. Again, as we mentioned before, we want to look for our GCF. So in this case, our GCF is 5a squared b. And then from there, we are going to take each term. First of all, we have to still represent our GCF. We're going to take each term and we're going to divide by 5a squared b. And our result in the first term would be 3a squared. Then we would end up with negative 2ab. And then we would end up with b squared. And at this point, we cannot factor any further. So this would be our final answer. The following table shows the length and width of two rectangles, rectangle A, rectangle B. Calculate the result of the perimeter of rectangle B minus the perimeter of rectangle A. Well, if you remember perimeter, we're going to add up all the sides. Well, we only have 2 listed here for each one, so we need to double that. So what I've done is I have broken down the information for rectangle A. We have one side that's 2x plus 4, and then we're obviously going to have another side that's 2x plus 4. Then we have x minus 1, x minus 1, and the grand total of the perimeter there is 6x plus 6. And I did the same thing for rectangle B. So we have 10x minus 4 for rectangle B, and we are going to subtract the 6x plus 6, and our total here would be 4x minus 10. Now let's talk about vertex and intercepts. The formula that you see here is going to help us begin to find the vertex. It's actually negative b over 2a, but it doesn't matter how it's written there. It's very similar. So what you want to do is you want to recall that our quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c. So we want to identify in our equation what is a. A is 1, b is 8, and c is 12. So from here we can begin filling in our negative b over 2a, which would be negative 8 over 2 times 1, or negative 8 over 2. Continue to reduce, we would get negative 4. Once we find that information, we take it and we substitute it back into the original equation and solve. And what are we solving for? We're solving for y this time. So negative 4 squared plus 8 times negative 4 plus 12. That's going to give us 16 minus 32 plus 12, or negative 16 plus 12, or a grand total of y equals negative 4. So our vertex is negative 4, negative 4. Then the problem says let's find our intercepts. As I showed in the last problem, we are looking for factors of 12 that when we add the same numbers, it actually equals 8. So we're looking probably for 6 and 2. So that gives us x plus 6 and x plus 2. But it says find our x-intercepts. So we need to take each one of these, and we need to set it equal to 0. Subtract 6. We get x equals negative 6. Again, take the other side, set it equal to 0, and we get x equals negative 2. So there's our intercepts and our vertex. Jess kicks a soccer ball off the ground in the air with an initial velocity of 29 feet per second. Using the formula, negative 16t squared plus vt plus s, what's the maximum height that the soccer ball reaches? Well, our velocity here is 29. What I did was I used Algebra for this, and I'll write it on here. And this is a great tool, Algebra. If you look at your teacher's announcement page, there are directions on how to use Algebra, and it's very similar to a graphing calculator. And what I did was I actually keyed in, you can barely read that, sorry, this is small. I keyed in the equation negative 16x squared plus 29x. I used x, I don't know, I'm just used to that. So from there, I actually found the vertex. And again, this is very hard to read, but it says what is the maximum height. So we're looking at the height, the value for y. And if you notice, if you can read it, the answer for that would be 13.1 feet. 13.1 feet. Let's think about another way of calculating this without GeoGebra. Let's see, what are we looking at? We're looking at our vertex. So if you remember from the last problem, to begin calculating your vertex, it would be negative b over 2a. But in order to do that, the first thing you need to do is identify your a, and then identify your b, and identify your c. So that's showing you two different ways. I showed you, let me go back, I showed you here how to do it, calculating it by hand. And then I showed you here how to use the GeoGebra to find it. On this slide, Emily wants to hang a painting in a gallery, but the painting and frame must have an area of 31 feet. The painting is 5 feet wide by 6 feet long. The frame must have an equal width of x on each side. Which quadratic equation represents the area of the painting frame combined? So what we have here is our length is 2x plus 6. Remember, we have x on both sides, so there's two x's, 2x plus 6. And then our width is, I probably drew that wrong, but anyway, our width is 2x plus 5. So if we are going to begin to calculate our quadratic equation, we're going to take both of those binomials and we are going to set it equal to the 31 square feet, or just 31. You are going to FOIL. Remember, FOIL is first, outer, inner, last. So we get 4x squared plus 10x plus 12x plus 30 equals 31. Then we start solving from here. 4x squared plus 22x plus 30 equals 31. And then from this step, we're going to subtract 31. And when we subtract 31, we actually get the answer of A. Based on the graph below, what are the solutions of the equation f of x equals g of x? We're going to mark exactly where they intersect. So where do they intersect? At negative 2, 0.5, and 3.5. See how simple that problem was? It's just identifying where they intersect. So now let's solve a problem here. We're going to solve for y. So 10c equals 9y squared minus 3. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add 3 to both sides. Our result would be 10c plus 3 equals 9y squared. So then we're going to divide by 9. And this is what we would end up with. 10c plus 3 divided by 9 equals y squared. And then we're going to take the square root of both sides, and that would be our answer. So now let's look at the domain of the following parabola. With our domain, remember, is your x values. So you're looking at all the numbers that the x represents in this graph. So in this particular case, it is all real numbers. Well, I know this problem doesn't ask for the range, but let's look at the range. Range is your y values. So what are your y values? They start at negative 3 and they go up. So therefore, y must be greater than or equal to negative 3. This problem says which best represents the graph. So let's look at it. Our first information is x equals negative 3. And remember the last problem, or a few problems before, we needed to find out, it's like working backwards now. We have the intercept, but now we need to start looking at the equation, or the equation. So we get x plus 3 equals 0. The next one's negative 2. So we get x plus 2 equals 0. And the other one is positive 2, so we get x minus 2 equals 0. So if we take these and begin to multiply them together, and I'm going to multiply my x plus 2 times x minus 2, only because I know that I have a differences of squares problem here. And my result is going to be a very simple binomial of x squared minus 4. And then I can actually multiply my x plus 3 times it. And my result is going to be the last equation. Sorry about that. So we would end up with x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x minus 12. If you would like to save this information so that you can refer back to it, the first step would be to go to File, Save, Whiteboard, All Pages. Make sure that you select that it's a PDF so that you can open it up later. And I like to tell students to save it on the desktop, because once you're finished with this class, I don't think you want to hang around with a bunch of files on your computer. I'm just kidding. So I hope this information helped. If not, please reach out to your instructor. Thank you.